You're free now.
Wholeness and balanced vibrations to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to definitely a preseason show of Occult Review. Of course, today is an amazing day. We're going to be cracking through the matrix once more, and it's 7 o'clock here Central Standard Time, February the 5th, 2013. And of course, there is a headline on today's show. But before I talk about that, I'm sure everyone realizes that we're going to be doing the Super Bowl show. I'm going to introduce my co-host, Dave Mathematics, and definitely get him on the line and just to, introduce himself. Dave, can you hear us?
I definitely can. Greetings and wholeness to the Resistance family and everyone tuning in. I'm very glad to be here today with Sevan, and we just got a jam-packed show and really looking forward to it. How you doing over there, brother?
Oh man, I'm feeling good. I've been working on this all day, actually since 5 o'clock this morning, and I've just been pushing through it. There's just all sorts of stuff that you not only uncover, but in addition to that, man, it's just all sorts of interference. I'll just say it like that. But sometimes, we get to a level where we start to really, really get into the major part of what the truth is. And that starts a major chain reaction in your life. Of course, it equals major expansion. And that expansion also equals a great deal of responsibility. So where we're at actually now is that we get a chance to become responsible adepts or adults by looking into the situations that are taking place around us, to stop joking and kidding all the time with, how you're seeing things, and to really start waking up and participating in life. Because as we'll see in today's conversation, there's been a lot of benching going on. And I guess that's like the correct term for today, is like a lot of people have been benched or put on the sidelines of life. So yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. But of course, Dave, like I said, feel free at any time during the conversation to chime in. I guess I'm going to go ahead and start getting right into this. But of course, we were talking before the conversation, and you covered a lot of very imperative topics. And just so everyone knows, it's really important for me, especially with these kind of shows, to have that anchor. And in many cases, the individual that is actually feeding the question or pitching the ball in order for it to be hit home. And what I mean by that is that at times, when I get on this radio, it's immense. I could pretty much tell you about every single thing I wouldn't say every single thing, but a great deal of things in this universe, and some things even beyond this universe. But at times, that's not necessarily what people need to hear, meaning that there are sometimes things that are very simple and very plain that people need to understand, and that will make the major change in their life. So what I wanted to do during this conversation is do the best that I could and that I can to stay grounded and to actually get the major questions asked. And so the listener is actually able to expand after this conversation. Today, there'll definitely be some images with this. It is an interactive show as always, and that means that we're going to be taking a lot of the images and the data related to what we're going to be talking about today, and we're going to be displaying that to you. And of course, that gets you closer to seeing what's going on. It allows you not to just believe what we're saying, but also to see it as it's taking place. Also, I want to let everyone know there is always a high definition copy of the show being recorded. So if for some reason things start to fall apart on your end somewhat, there's always, as far as connections are concerned, there's always a backup, and it will be sourced to you properly. That's, of course, also through a good friend of mine, Jason at PrometheanReach.com. He definitely hosts all of the content that is needed from every single major speaker that I ever listened to. And so you'll get our stuff there if you can't just find it on the site. So just know that there's multiple places that you can not only get our stuff, but also other people that are working on this major expansion of consciousness. I definitely want to, before starting the conversation, even just tip my hat to all those that are bringing wholeness and that are bringing the message to make people aware. It's an extremely tough job. And it's something that you just stick with. And in most cases, if you're telling the truth, that you have people around you that are always encouraging you. So what I do want to say thank you to all the people who are participating in the network and being there and giving that encouragement when at times my mailboxes and Skypes may be full of discouragement. So it does assist in allowing us to continue. I feel like we work on a collective in that way. And so by all means, what I wish to do is to deliver the explanation of what is taking place, not only with American football, but also what is taking place with the more popular football, or that, you know, us Americans call soccer. And it's important, again, to get into just some foundation in the beginning of this conversation. I want people to not take it as the tone of the conversation if they somewhat feel uncomfortable with the geometry and the things that I'm going to display as far as whether they comprehend it or not. I just want you to know that you're going to need to kind of have this background somewhat in geometry, or basically the study of the planet you stay on. And then that will allow you to be able to decipher a lot of what is taking place right in front of your very eyes. So where I wanted to really begin the show is I wanted to begin with this particular image, which is what is known as the phoenix. And I think in the ancient scripture, at times it was called the most hated bird. And obviously that came about because of a conflict. And what we really see in our reality today is that with the energies that we live around, if we for one moment let go of the ego or the eagle and just see that there's other intelligence that may not be on the same wavelength as us, meaning it may not be completely visible to you, but also seeing that visible means not necessarily whether you can see it with your naked eye, but also whether or not you can interpret it. So if you cannot interpret something, it still becomes invisible. And remains, invisible. And so the reason why I'm starting with this image is because what I happened to be able to come upon just in briefly looking at the footage today, I finally got an opportunity, and just getting an HD copy here in Costa Rica was a little difficult. But I got a chance to look at the footage finally and do the clippings of the actual halftime show. And I was, however, searching Google just for images just to see, you know, what people were snipping. And I found this image, and it actually was right side up. I didn't get a chance to upload the original image. But if you would invert this, turn this image upside down, what you'll see is that this is just a standard mandala or motif that was displaying when Beyonce began her performance, except you wouldn't be able at all to divine that it was a bird, meaning that you wouldn't be able to see at all that it was a bird unless you were able to turn the screen upside down and then put somehow the phoenix head on top. But because I was not only looking for this kind of symbolism, but expecting this kind of symbolism, and I'll explain that. Because when I looked at how the 2012 ceremony went with the Olympics, I started realizing and waking up even more and paying attention to why there is such a display of what is called Luciferian culture in our environment. Meaning, I can definitely see that obviously every planet or every archetype carries a certain level of energy. And as long as we have the proper levels of the energy that represents, then it seems to me that it would be very easy to remain in harmony. But if for some reason you get too much of a certain kind of energy, then there's an extreme imbalance that occurs. So of course, here's the image from the 2012 Olympics in London. And you can also see here that the people are actually bowed down, that they're on a bended knee. And there's, of course, a step pyramid here. And this is what is at the top of the step pyramid. So you can see that this symbol is very similar to a triangle with the all-seeing eye on top. But what you can see now with this, because generally you're not able to interpret what that all-seeing eye is you're able to see somewhat of what it's affiliated with. And this is where the adventure begins. Because what it's actually affiliated with is a very ancient story about an entity who has metamorphosized itself into a bird now, but before was a serpent. And you only need to research nature and evolution within the animals to understand how snakes eventually evolve into birds. This is not something that I'm making up. This is something that you see within prehistoric life. So when we see the image of the bird in front of us, it should now be synonymous to you as the serpent, just under another motif. And the reason why this becomes important to understand is because there is a hidden component in our reality. It's literally something that will hit us, and then we'll turn around and we'll blame the wrong person because we didn't even see where the initial attack came from. If you study the ancient works, you'll find that there is a great deal of knowledge about spirits. That there's different degrees of spirits. There's the spirits in whales and spirits in other life forms that are not known to man, spirits in the stars. But really, their word for spirits is synonymous with our word for energy. Because when you realize that everything is energy, you actually get to another point where you realize that there's different kind of energies, different variations. And some people may say, well, no, that's not true. Everything's made from the same thing. Well, listen, we're already down very far on the timeline. So if you look around you, you'll find electricity. You'll find direct current. You'll find prana. You'll find vegetable matter. You'll find crystalline energy. You'll find chemical compounds in combustion. And what you'll notice is that a great deal of the energies, especially in a phi-based reality, are generated off of conflict and friction. So when you want to ask yourself why you see so much conflict and friction around you, or basically wars and backbiting and hating and strife and those components, jealousy, etc., it's because there is a phi-based system running that is attempting to generate energy on those components. It's a very old cog. It's not the only level of energy, people. This is what has to be conveyed to everyone today, because a lot of people are running headlong in it, being blinded by this light of illumination. And they're being entertained to a degree with this idea that if you just make it, if you go to Hollywood, if you go west, then you'll succeed in this life, when in fact you'll utterly fail. What we'll show today is that this system of knowledge, which is really from the Orient, this is not a system of knowledge that was created in America. Luciferianism and Venusian culture is not from America. It's from China, from a country level. But when you talk about the name America, Amir is a king or lord, even a god when the king deifies himself. And then when you put Ika on the back, you feminize it. So it actually means a feminine god or goddess. Okay, so now you get why there, out there in the Big Apple, or the Big Pentagram, as I call it, there is a Statue of Liberty of the goddess. Because America, as much as you may want to deny it or not, is a matriarch. Wicca still delivers the food and the water and the bread and the milk and all that to the babies. So all of the organizations that what they call the acronyms, they say the government loves their acronyms. I bet they do, because they're all Kabbalistic. But it's a complete array of a knowledge that was gained and then utilized by the founding fathers of the place we know as America. So we're going to be breaking that down today. But remember, this knowledge of combustion, even if you go to your Google, you can type in Chinese pentagram. Okay? And when you type in Chinese pentagram, what you'll get is you'll get a Wikipedia entry, of course, Wiki is Wicca. They used to also have the symbol of the owl, owl synonymous with wisdom, but you need to figure out where this bird comes from also. But what you'll find in the Wikipedia is you'll see that the fire versus water versus wood, and that system of combustion was already discovered, who knows, aeons ago. And the only work that was being done here, especially by secret societies, as everyone's fascinated with that, is figuring out more systems and more ways to design off of this original blueprint and to put others into this combustion of creating energy and then being able to harness that energy. That's it. There was really nothing else going on in the three-dimensional environment after this system of knowledge arrived. Before then, it was great. As I always say, it was good, and then God showed up. Because what happens is anytime something says, I am God, I'm separate than you, I'm greater than you, at that point, it begins division. So what you'll see, especially in football, there's a lot of divisions. There's Division 5, Division 6. But the entire sport, and in all sports here in this world, are put together for the friction and the contract, and excuse me, the friction and of course the contract. I said the right word, but it'll be in a different tense later because I'll explain it. But what this is really put together to do is to actually get people to get into a conflictive, divisive type state, not only with themselves, but with as many things as they can engage with their mind at once. I don't like her. I don't like that team's color. I don't like that mascot. I don't like even the other team. Oh, I can't stand that guy. And if you notice, all media is driven that way. Turn on TV, and then all of a sudden there's all these things that you don't like to see because it's designed to be in conflict. It's not designed to give you wholeness. So what we'll again see throughout this dissertation on football is we'll see just how deep things really go when you're talking about what it takes to actually configure what we can now call a portal so that energy can be drained from the individuals that are in its vicinity. So I'm going to go really briefly here to our geometric pictures, but before I do, I'm going to say what's up again to my co-host and see, what he has to say about this as I kind of shuffle through a couple things here.
Well, definitely, you were on a nice roll there. I did not want to interrupt, but definitely, we've got a gentleman, or I believe a gentleman in the chat box who was talking about draining the ethers of the individuals watching the sports. I thought that was a very apt point in terms of what you were saying, and I think this can segue into a discussion about Kundalini and the immense levels of energy the athletes have, and even some of the performers have when they are performing, and they are in a way imploding that energy and using that energy in a way, unknowing to them, of course, is channeling into a particular portal that is doing something particular. And as you see these images flashing in the geometry within it, this is something that we need to understand so that we can get to a point where we're no longer shocked by, oh my God, there's a pentagram. Oh my God, Captain America's wearing this symbol. And it's scary. We got to be, done with being entertained and scared about it, and instead really understand exactly what's going on, so that now we can actually be in the know and get into that stream of gnosis to where we can empower ourselves and stop watching the throne, per se.
I mean, brilliantly said. I mean, that is exactly the key here. We want to get people in a position to where they're not looking at this like, oh my goodness, it's doomsday. They're more looking at this that, okay, now I see the entire thing. No wonder why I couldn't. No wonder why it was. And then what you'll actually find is the missing piece to the I wonder why. Like if you wonder why people are different, if you wonder why there's just an immense level of dishonesty within our government, if you wonder why all those questions, this is where that vault of I wonder why is actually kept. And I'm gonna go here really briefly to just the connection between the rectangle and the pentagram and phi, just so it's clear. And I will tell everyone that I'm not a mathematician at all. In fact, if I really wanted to put my time and energy into something, it would be under a microscope or through a telescope. But when it comes time to look at two dimension, which is definitely second dimensional geometry, which is definitely becoming very important these days, then it makes us have to go and brush ourselves up really briefly on a crash course of geometry. So I do want to tell people, for if they hear the wrong terminology or the wrong quotient or the wrong ratio and they happen to be math geniuses, then just put it in the chat box and correct it, but don't act like we don't know what we're talking about, because after this show, it's going to be clear proofs. Meaning that you shouldn't have to be convinced of the truth. When it appears, you'll know it because it'll cut through everything. So here it is. We have just a diagram that shows you phi, and it shows you also the pentagram, just so I can get these two symbols up here and get them knocked out very briefly. You need to understand that the geometry that is used within here that is primary is one, the rectangle. And the reason why the rectangle is very important, because if you turn around, or if you're facing in a certain direction and away from the door, but if you turn around, look at the door, you'll see it's in a rectangle. And you also see in most houses that the doors may be split at what we call the phi angle, or where the door can become a square, right at where the knob on the door is. And the reason for this is because there's a very ancient knowledge that exists here on this planet that everything is being built in and built under. And this knowledge has to do with phi in all of its different variations. We know that there is a great deal of organic life, even the body itself, that is constructed on the organic system of phi. Very few people understand the inorganic version of phi, which I call psi, or the simulation. And this is when the curve, which is obviously organic, becomes a straight line, which is obviously inorganic. And if you notice, all the teaching in the systems of alchemy and the Pythagorean knowledge, etc., they use the geometry that is straight line geometry. So some people think that the difference between that is masculine and feminine. But in reality, the difference in between that is not even can't even be explained with such limited topics as or terms as masculine and feminine. What you're actually dealing with is portals to another planet. If you've always been searching for, where is this extraterrestrial component coming from, we are on it today. We have landed. We can now see clearly the extraterrestrial involvement that's going on the planet for who knows how long, encased within a system that has been hidden, also called Amen, hidden from the people who are practicing it. And generally, these systems have some basic principles that they go by. One is a heavy level of giving up energy, heavy level of division going on. This is the chosen people concept. or this is even the devil concept. They're both the same. So what you actually get here is with the rectangle and how it comes into the pentagram is you get the actual knowledge to the gate that is open, in several gates that are open, throughout our planet. And because the body is actually configured in organic phi, the physical body, not the soul, it becomes at times and can be a host for spiritual energies. And this is the ancient knowledge that was known about, that's encased in the language and etymology, that you find that the spirits, also known at times, the group of spirits known as the serpent spirits, used at times human bodies for their double. You'll find in the ancient knowledge that it tells you that you are to always remain on guard and to watch your gates, because something else can come inside and attempt to drive your vehicle in the direction that it wants to go. It can suggest to you where it wants to go. And this, of course, is the knowledge of the jinn, the knowledge of the invisible race, the race that lives longer than the physical man, the race that is one dimension or one notch away. And because we refuse to believe such things, we've gotten ourselves into a jam. Very briefly, if you look into religion, you will find that there is always a deceased God. There is not one religion where you go in and the God is actually there. The God in all religions is on another plane. The God has already died. And that's why it was known most of the time, the God's name was known as Deus, Dios, meaning to or to die. Diablo, meaning to split, division, a bow, or what some people would see as a bowl. These are both the same words, and that's why you get this super bowl. Because when you cut a sphere in half, it makes the shape of what the human knows as a bowl. And so the supper bowl is basically a half of a sphere, basically a conflicted split human, open, and their energy can be pulled from them in this state. And so, of course, today, this is a very depth conversation. Some people have already logged off. Like, man, that's way too far out.
Sevan, if I might interject for a moment,
Sure.
that was beautifully broken down. But even if you don't understand everything Sevan just said in terms of division and the dualistic mindset, all you have to do is really look at sports itself. And I mean, I'm sure everyone who's into sports and is, grew up watching a team, you can observe how certain fans just can't stand each other. I mean, it runs their life. Red Sox fans versus Yankees fans. I mean, you can see the energy that is created, just a pure division. And it's not just sports. The dualistic mind
For sure.
is very susceptible to that when it gets locked into those programs. And even, when you're talking about politics, sports, whether, Beyonce is the best or Rihanna is the best, et cetera. Everyone has their little wagons that they jump on if they get caught into that system. So even if you don't understand the esoteric level of what Sevan is referring to when he talks about division, you can at least see it in the exoteric and how it plays out in terms of the sports fans and the people who latch onto that system and don't even realize it.
Oh, great point. Great point. Because, I can't act like I'm foreign to it. I can remember at least 7 or 8 years ago, being in a sports bar. I would always wait until the last game, though, because I just never loved to watch. I always like to play myself. But realistically, you get your team, and then when something happens wrong, you're like, oh, man, and you really feel it. And then, somebody doesn't win. Maybe you placed a bet. Then someone's teasing you about it. Next thing you know, you're basically getting drained. So you're right. There's from millions of people around the world. The soccer, as we call it, is even more intense. Like somebody may die in the stadium because of the level of intensity that someone may feel about this their sport and their team. And meanwhile, realistically, nothing can be more of an illusion because nothing belongs to you. The channel, No team player. You don't have no contact with any team player. Most people, they don't know the team owner. They may not even ever be able to buy a ticket to the actual game, but they've already committed. I'm on that side. And then they also have to see that each mascot or animalistic energy of each team represents a specific archetype or archon that works on manipulating the person's mind, because they've already been limited into the Enneagram, meaning that the 9 personalities that they say exist within the world that everyone can fall under, there is a personality or archon or a trait that they've created to start to engineer and change from time to time what that really stands for. They call it the re-engineering of humans, or the assimilation of humans. And also, just to, as a sidebar here, I do have a picture up, which is from the Masonic Tarot. And it shows you, again, many of these people are already in the know. This is not something that we're talking about that is so fringe, except for how many people are not aware of it. But it is fact in many sense. And what happens is that if you can read the symbols and the signs, then you understand what you're looking at. So what I have here is the card of the Fool, which is, they say, the beginning of the journey. It's where everyone begins. And you see the Fool is walking through the door, but the door is a rectangle and has been recognized in the phi shape, because it's basically going down what some people call the rabbit hole. Some people have gone down the rabbit hole and they don't even know how to get out. They've been with the Namaste and all these different factions that run under the same system, and then they're kind of stuck in there. But it also says with this individual that they call the Fool, that in that pack that is on their back, it actually contains everything. And that's like a symbol to show everyone that everything that you need to progress is actually inside of you. It's already with you, even though one may embark on a journey looking for something else. And of course, Dave, as you brought up earlier about the division on the externalized level, is that realistically, it makes everyone go outside to look for their happiness. And what I'm telling people is that you have to work internally first. I'm not telling people that it's wrong to go out and find happiness and be communal with other people that are sharing that with you. But this is not a reciprocal sharing. This is actually vampiric. This knowledge in this geometry is Venusian. It's based on really what we will call today voodoo. So what actually happens here is you witness that a person puts out a lot of energy, but doesn't get anything back. I mean, what do you really get after the game, especially if you happen to like the team that is the loser? But realistically, even if you like the team that is a winner, you get some gratification for the hours that you spent basically in worship. But I mean, let's get on to that. Let's get on to Dave. Let's get on to talking about just how much you get in exchange from actually engaging in some of these subjects. If you're not actually the one working out, or the one running, or the one that's actually training your mind to be tough. I mean, that's the athlete's reward. But the spectator, right, it's another thing.
Definitely. I just want to touch on that real quick, because I mean, if you think about it, particularly as we're talking about football and the Super Bowl, fans generally wait all week for Sunday, and then Sunday comes along, and then fans who are really caught up into it, that's their day to exert energy, at least in their mind. But of course, it's interesting how you'll see a lot of NFL fans, and it's as if their energy is spent, and they're looking to the football players to revive that energy. Right. Get that Kundalini, get that current circulating again, not realizing that, as you just noted, the only way to get that engine oscillating properly again is through internal function. Still wanting to watch on the television, and, that archonic relationship to where they feel they can somehow get that energy from the football game and get that explosion, get that, get that contact. Right. When in reality, it just gets spent from watching if they're not doing anything actively with their internal system.
Right. So there's basically a false energy that actually happens. You get excited, you cheer, and then you feel great. But then it's like caffeine. There's this huge crash at the end, because in reality, you haven't really participated in anything that's going to get you to the next level. And that's just the thing about it. It's what you're not actually going to learn something different every time you watch a sport. Like when you open up a book, each page you turn, you learn something different. So it's very it's very specific at how it works. It's not really, again, reciprocal, which is, also getting us to a lot of, again, the extraterrestrial component, because when you're talking about non-reciprocal energy, then actually what you're talking about is what we would term as something like a vampire, where it's designed to pull and take energy. And so America really has to ask itself, has it gotten itself involved in some vampiric relations? And is there a case that we may have been sold up the river? Meaning that, has America always belonged to the Chinese, or is that just now? Because anyone looking at the indexes know that everything has pretty much been transferred over to China, and that they own a great deal of the land that's underneath where a person has purchased their land. And they don't think they can sell the land a certain amount of meters down underneath you, and that belongs to China and is bonded. So what happens is that I watch personally, especially in going through this information today, is I watch this spiritual taking over before the physical one takes place. Like, even when you look at space, the celestial bodies that you see there are only reflections and manifestations of what's going on in the universe. So it's definitely the same thing in our physical reality, that there is going to be some spiritual happening first, some spiritual alliances taking place before the actual physical version of what those partnerships equal take place. And I just see now, especially with observing and understanding the occult myself from an adept level, I observe now it seems like this major push to get everyone to make a decision if whether or not they want to basically be a vampire, or if they want to still work on discovering pure energy. And this is the reason why I say work on it is because we have billions of people in the world, but still only maybe thousands or tens of thousands of people that are actually working on figuring out how we're going to be more harmonic in this reality. So, there's an immense task before us, but I also want to point out again, the Venusian component, which is, I have the picture up here of Beyonce in her magazine, says V shall overcome. And the V, of course, is the Roman numeral for 5. So remember, the reason why the word 5 sounds like phi is because we're dealing with the pentagram. And you're going to hear me today also drill some stuff home, meaning that this stuff is at times, you kind of, for some reason, can't put it all together unless someone is very repetitive about what they're showing you. So I want to make sure we also do that, especially with the geometry. And again, up on the screen now is actually the precession of Venus, which traces out a pentagram in the night sky. So it's important to understand that much of this knowledge has come from observing, as far as the geometry is concerned, has come from observing Venus's precession through the stars. But the reason why that is so important is because there's a great deal of individuals, especially within the societies, that are already familiar with the contact that has been made or established with the planet we know of as Venus. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of like opens up a great part of the show. But we can also take a couple breaks here. Like if we want to I think we're going to need to get refreshed a few times. We're probably going to have this show out for about 2 hours. If anyone's trying to ask, well, how long are we going to be on today? It's probably going to be about 2 hours. We're definitely going to have to go through some things. We have notes even on this show, and we haven't even started looking at those notes, but we want to definitely get through all of this information. So people need to feel like by the end of this conversation that they actually understand this, and that's what becomes most important to us. Again, I'm showing just one more image of the conjunction and how it's drawn out in the sky of Venus's precession. So realize that every time you see those pentagrams, which are not just in the United States, but also in every other country, like on country flags, even if one flag doesn't have it, there will be several flags inside of that country that have it. And that's basically flags of conquest. And yeah, so, I was going to get into George and the Dragon, but I think I'll leave that a little bit later because, that gets us into the story of Britain. So, what do you think, Dave? Where do you think people are going to be ready to go now with this?
Well, I think, right now in terms of when you just dropped in on 5 and the 5 and we saw the Roman numeral for 5 on the Beyonce cover. Let's talk about the 5 going into 6 and the 11 and sort of the recurring symbolism. And of course, everyone Some people see that recurring numerology of 1111.
Oh,
But
for
on the
sure.
football field itself, I just want to make sure everyone, gets a glimpse of this, because you definitely broke it down vividly in terms of showing how even on the football field itself, you see the system of the five going into six, a pentagram into the hexagram, and then you see the 1111 also reflected on the football field. If we can pull that image up.
Oh, for sure, for
Um,
sure. For sure.
and that,
I have to just pull up the banner to that, but everyone can see it in the banner, and I do have that. Actually, excuse me, it's up on there now. But for sure, I mean, we definitely need to get into that, because those are, again, more of the facts. When we're talking about every soccer team and every football team has 11 players on one side and 11 on another, and 11 plus 11, of course, is 22. 22 is the numbers of the Kabbalah, and also the numbers of the dualistic God known as four. Four is, of course, the door, and then when you get to the door, you get to the rectangle, pentagram, etc. Remember, all this knowledge runs like a spiral, because that's how the knowledge is. It has to connect to itself in order to actually generate. And this is why also we're talking about fire in many tenses, and that's why Kundalini was associated with fire. And even in Masonry, you see they go up degrees. And fire, of course, goes up and is counted in degrees. So what you're really dealing with here is you're dealing with, again, the dualistic principle, but they have created these basically juicing factories. All stadiums are sitting on top of the major ley lines and points for the down current. Most of the time, downtown is where it's at, because downtown is where the vortex of the city is, obviously, if you understand the etymology. But again, so what you have is you have this energy vortex open, and then you're sitting right in it. And every time you have emotion or a reflection, even, then that is immediately sucked out. And that's why it's important for them to keep getting some type of reaction and response out of you. And notice in the Super Bowl, there's also the Super Bowl commercials. I want to make sure we didn't forget to talk about that today either. But even the commercials are always designed to really get one racial ethnicity against another one, and just all sorts of confusions going on with all of the different compartmentalization that has been done with all the duality within, especially the United States, but also existing in other countries. And so, people need to also see that this level of knowledge, and this is, how it was explained to me very directly, is that they've been doing this for, at least this group that has inherited this knowledge, for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So this is not their first time doing this. And this becomes somewhat of an extreme disadvantage for us, because we're almost blindsided, because our parents didn't know about it. Nobody really knew about it. Nobody told us to stay, away from it or clear of it, or even how to recognize it. But what you're dealing with is actually being inside of somewhat of a machine. And what I have up here is I actually have the novels of the Hung Society, this is a very old book that was republished again. But basically what it entails is the exact structure of how the Illuminati and many of those organizations were put together, just from a hierarchical structure, not occult knowledge. For those who are like, okay, I can find out how I can be the Illuminati. Some people are still, stuck there. But think about it. If you have a society that is already designed, and that society comes from a particular place, then every society that is set up under its system will be actually still under its dominion. So this answers a lot of people's questions of, if we took this knowledge from the Chinese and we just found that it worked, and so we'll start using it, but we're our own crew. That's not how it works. How it works is that there are, in this system, there are mantras, there are words, there are passwords, there are rituals, there are degrees, there are entities. So there's all these different components that different members possess. Or it's possessing them, excuse me. But what happens is that to see it for what it really is, what you'll be actually seeing is that it's the simple top-down approach, where there's always someone above you, there's always a master, you're always to obey them, you're very limited, because people need to think, as a human being, you've already graduated through several steps of your quote-unquote evolution, your ascension. So to go join a society and then let them put you on step one again, would be, visually, if you want to see it, would be the act of putting a large pyramid of you don't even know how many men, women, and entities on top of yourself. So it needs to be clear that the first degrees, especially 1 to 3 or some 1 to 33, are basically what we would call in the military a grunt, and doesn't understand what's going on in other degrees, and not even aware of that, not even in the knowledge that there is other degrees. So remember, there's even division amongst them to how much they understand about this. And this is why if you go and you ask someone that is already initiated into one of these societies such as Masonry, because everyone at least knows one Mason around them, and you start talking to them about phi, and you start talking about portals and Venus and all that, it would be just as similar to talking to a Christian about those kind of things. They're not versed in that level of it. What they are versed on is the deity. And this is why the deity within Masonry and the deity within Christianity, which is just known as Yah or Jah, which means fire God, is the same. So here's another thing that must be known. As far as humans are concerned, we are not separated male and female. So the female species of our race is not seen as different than the title man. And this is a very deep mystery, because when you go to, I'll explain it simply, when you go to a penguin, you don't differentiate between the male and the female penguin, right? But you know that there's a male penguin and a female penguin. So it's the same thing with humans. There's a male human and a female human. But the reason why they're indicating, and some people get it confused and they actually think that the woman is the serpent. That's not what the ancient texts say. What the ancient texts say is that the serpent went through the woman. As they say, use the woman when it finally gets interpreted. Well, what this all boils into, if you can understand the riddle, is what they're saying is that this is a spiritual possession. Once this entity can possess someone, and you'll be able to recognize it. You can see it, and we'll have some pictures showing it today, especially within the Super Bowl performance of when the possession begins to take place. But once that, let's say in this case, female is possessed with a specific serpent energy, then when a male comes and copulates with her and shares his DNA, his vibration with her, he then catches it too. So this is the ancient knowledge also about why, there was a difference between love and lust. And this is actually why the Venusian component, you could just see it for what it is. It's also Venusian geometry, is the heart symbol. Some people need to ask themselves, why is that called the heart when it's not shaped like a heart? The heart shape is not shaped like a heart in the chest. And if you research, you'll find out that they say even the heart chakra in the body is Venus. So why is Venus associated with the heart? And so again, you get deeper into the geometry and you start to find out about these kind of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that. Let me see here really briefly. I was going to take a break really quick, but I got to get the switcher and things going. But yeah, we're going to just take a break. I'm going to get a couple, some more water here. Let Dave refresh himself. Probably go over some notes really briefly. Then we're going to get right into this. There's definitely a lot more into today's show. But as I said, we're going to take it easy. We're going to come in really smooth as far as, not getting too deep into this to where nobody is able to follow what's going on. But I think right now it's really great as far as us conveying a message to everyone about what's going on and them being able to clarify how that works. What do you think, Dave?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's a lot of activity going on in the chat box. Just wanted to shout out everyone there, let you know we see you and, working, definitely Sevan is going to be working hard, and I'm going to make sure, your questions are addressed. And,
for sure,
all the contributions are greatly appreciated, but just stay tuned. We've got a lot to cover.
For sure. Okay, hold on. So I'm going to go ahead and put on some hold stuff, and then we'll be coming right forward. Hold this. Okay, we are forward. Awesome imagery there from West Capacitor. Put that together for the Resistance. Want to say thanks. All right, I'm going to go ahead and check with my co-host. I was actually here in the studio, also my wife, and she was like, okay, we got to get, you have to, tell them about the massive level of expansion that everyone has to get ready to go into and explain to them what, these people are doing. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to take it easy with everyone right now. But I think we should take this thing up a notch. What do you think, Dave?
Oh, most definitely. I think, everyone who's tuned in right now is definitely able to go deep with you and go deep with us. So by all means, let's go.
All right, all right. So, let's go ahead and get started with, what everyone came to see. I think a lot of people were asking themselves the question about what was going on with the Super Bowl halftime show. And of course, I actually put up the post that there was going to be a Super Bowl halftime show ritual before there was even the show. And some people may have asked me, maybe I didn't check the message, but I thought some people asked me, how could you already say there's going to be a ritual before the show actually begins? I said, because they would never miss the opportunity to do the ritual. And the rituals now are going to be pretty much the same. And that's why when you actually have the opportunity, which I took all day finishing off the task, but when you have the opportunity to run Madonna's performance from last year next to Beyonce's performance this year, you actually see a lot of synchronicities, especially with the evocation process that is taking place. So let me just go ahead and get into the beginning of this. And, let me pull the switcher really briefly here. I'm just going to be having some people come down to the studio soon. So this will be awesome because I'll be able to spend more of my time actually, just building on the subject itself than, working with this switcher and, all this software and things at times, where you're trying to convey the message. A little difficult, but anyway, we get through it. What you're looking at here is obviously this is the mandala or the sigil that is being used. That's the terms. And what you're really seeing is you're seeing the beginning of what I was explaining to you about the double or the dual character, also known as the shadow or the shade or Shaddai. These are the terms that are used for the idea or the eidolon that there is another you, another image. Some call that a doppelganger. Now, I'll tell you in the beginning of all of this, all is self. So however long it takes us to get into total realization of that, that's our quest. But what you're seeing here is very simple to interpret because the dualistic and the multiplicity is all about duality. So that's why this was chosen as the first image. We'll go here to the next image, which shows you that this is actually her being projected through one of their their simple software devices, but she's also spinning her head and it's creating this shape, which is actually what you know as a mandala. So there is an actual evocation or a frequency or cymatic being used. What you'll also notice within the entire program is this type of geometry. The 8-pointed geometry, the 6-point geometry, 5s, 3s, etc. Especially used within what we call Illuminati motif. But the interesting and most in-depth thing about this video that I discovered, not only the actual phoenix, but is that there are pentagrams embedded all over the video that you'll never see unless you actually take this thing frame by frame. And this is one of them. She was in the beginning there in the center of this sphere, and you can go and get the HD recording yourself and go ahead and freeze frame over this. You'll see there is clearly a pentagram on the floor. Now, of course, some people may think that's a stretch, right? Even I thought, I'm not going to introduce that because everything that people think that's going to be a stretch, I don't even need to use it because some of this stuff is so blatant, you'll see it and it'll be crystal clear. So go here to my next picture. Also, Dave, if you want to say anything about Like this is a serious thing. I'm glad that we got to this point. Thank you. Like what some people, I'm like always walking on pins and needles. Like, look, I think there's something going on. I've discovered something. And you don't know that you really discover something until you have to always do brute force in order to get through it. It's like, my term is I'll John Henry this thing, meaning that John Henry went through a mountain to beat a machine.
Right.
And realistically, they always make the stories where the person die in the end, but that's not really what happened. What I'm trying to show people is that it takes a lot of character and courage to actually go against something that you instinctually feel that is not right. And then once you get all the way down to the nitty gritty of the details of how it's put together in a complex life, then you start to really, really rouse the attention of the others, the ones we don't speak of. This is when you go through all of the movies, you actually see, when you understand the symbolism and things that are going on, you see the gates that are being used. You see the configurations, you see the geometry. Even running over this Madonna show and this Rihanna, the Rihanna show too. Lennon Hart did a great job on that. But even if running over into this Beyonce show, think about this. Okay, we'll go over this Beyonce show and I'll show you all the geometry step by step, just a couple pentagrams and a few portals. But if you go to a rock concert with Megadeth, if you show someone there inverted pentagram, they're going to look at you like, and we know. You
Right.
see what I mean? So what we're actually talking to is an audience that doesn't know. Okay, so also we have to distinguish what is it that they don't know. And of course, most of the people that are adhering to this knowledge don't ask. They don't ask the question. They are hoping to be accepted. That's why it's called ancient order of accepted, not non-accepted. So this means that they're actually playing harlot to the dragon, meaning that when you see all these companies, you see all these firms, you see all these men, you see all these entities that they've erected, and then you see them all pay obeisance and bow down and trade in their own fellow human for a pyramid, a golden pyramid, then you actually seen, like they say in the book, woe to you, he's down. I would say, woe to you, he's come down to you, or it's come down to you, meaning that there is something else here that is hindering mankind, and it doesn't like mankind. And this is something that we're looking like what part of the timeline is it that we didn't like ourselves? Because some people say, well, I thought you said all the self. Yeah. So somehow on the timeline, we felt uncomfortable with ourselves. That's now. That's why we're experiencing what we're calling serpents, negative energies, etc. Because a collective group of us who normally moves in an ocean or a ship, all of us together there's been a mutiny on board. The ship has been disabled. All sorts of things, predators are attaching to us, leeches. People who are not carrying their own weight, while you also have those who are gathering too much and becoming stagnant. So then again, like when you come out and you start to say something, I got to turn on the camera here for a moment. Everyone's just looking at the black screen, but they can hear the sound. When you come out to say something, you face an immense level of challenges. First of all, no support. Look, I had a guy tell me when this first began, oh man, he asked me what day I was born. I told him what day I was born. He said, man, you're a master. But he said, don't be surprised if you don't get no help though. And I felt that. I felt what he was saying, like it was truth, but meaning that there was going to be a little bit of help. But not much as you think that it should be when you're talking about emancipating these people. You're talking about taking them to another level of consciousness. Ascension is not physical, it's spiritual. You can ascend inside of your body. Some people think they ascend and be on a spaceship with some grays speaking Enochian. It's wired down in an entirely different way. And what you have is you have very few people who can crack into this and hold their mind. Like one thing I was thinking about today, I said, man, it's a sacrifice here because you have to put the data inside of you in order to be able to compute it properly. And then when it's inside of you, if it's a virus, it's infecting you. So why you have only a certain amount of time to crack it. But so I'm telling humanity, I cracked it. You don't have to go that way. You don't have to go that route. What they're trying to do is something they've already done before. The serpent moves in a circle. what happens is that in our lives and in our expansion, we've been endowed with such magnificent capabilities. They say mankind started on Mars. I'm talking about man and woman again. I was trying to clarify that before I got cut off. But we began on Mars because that's Ma, that's masculine, that's Madame. That is actually the womb. And then there is another serpent who began on Venus. And then who do you have smashed in the middle of Mars and Venus and all the symbolism it represents, from the dogs to the goats to inverted pentagrams, Venus is upside down, etc. Who do you have in smack dab in the middle? Earth. An idea. This was a dream. This was something that we all put together so that we can get away from what we're bringing right now. Like, people are always looking for this better place. It was here. We said that this was going to be the place, that we weren't going to allow this to happen. This division. But what I do most of the time, like I said, is I have to govern this energy in which even I possess. I have to say, how much can you give? How much can you say before they look at you as if you're too real? You see, in a fake society, you have to create a bridge. Make believe, pretend to be great. What they're calling accomplishments are not really accomplishments. According to the universe, you get into a laboratory and look stupid. You get into with chemistry and don't even know what you're doing or burn yourself. But these are the foundations to nature which gave us the keys to actually open up the universe inside of ourselves. That's all nature had to offer. Nature did not intend for those who walk that dark path in their consciousness to take the knowledge of light and try to blind everyone with it. So the heat and the warmth no longer allows you to incubate properly, but burns you to a crisp or chars you. Like we're talking about the word char and cheer. You got cheerleaders. Then you, again, on the reality, and you're perceiving all this going on, the books are written up like woman is doing it. That's why I come even today to emancipate women. Maybe you'll see a woman messiah next. So, because what happens is that woman, of course, we're getting blamed because a lot of women get into the lust, the heart, the Venus. Victoria's Secrets. Who's Victoria? Queen Victoria. That's Venus. There's a V in front of that. That's the queen. Hive mind. Britain, the covenant. Tan is the serpent. Tan, like you in the sun, taking the energy of the sun. The sun is synonymous with the serpent. So see, there was ancient knowledge, but then everyone rolled it underneath one symbol. There's no one symbol for an untold level of energies. That's what makes the universe limitless. And then some people want to right off the bat jump into saying that they understand the entire thing and they understand all itself. Remember, what I quote the highest maximum, all itself, and I'm still in the process of actually accomplishing that. When I accomplish that, I'll blow out the entire spectrum. You see, there is a government of energy that can exist here. And that's why many individuals that are becoming familiar with their energy body start seeing that thing start oscillating. You start feeling the connection from the other devices and electronics and things around. You start touching crystals, your forehead's popping. There's all sorts of things going on. You're swearing you're seeing something out of the corner of your eye. Like in that movie, what's the movie? John Dies in the End. You got to check that out. There's things in there that they're showing you that, you know, generally they wouldn't even be showing people, but they're getting so close. Meaning that there's other people working on emancipating humanity, but it's still up to the individual. Like I posted in the thing, we're doing a virtual cleanse coming up, solutions to this situation, because the reason why you may not be able to see this clearly or calculate this properly or slow it down so you can see what it really is because your filters are clogged. So there is another component to this deep level of knowledge and spiritual philosophy that makes one feel glorious. There is this actual physical work. I talked to a couple of people the other day. They said, we're in action. We actually go and we do things. That's where most of our time is spent, not on Skype. Because there is major things that still need to be developed, but we need support. I know individuals that are building free energy devices, not for cars, but for humans that are cracking into the arc of the energy that is produced within water. And these people are on their last leg staying in trailers. And then, like I said, whatever used to happen with when we would die for speaking the truth, that covenant is over. That's the 2012 thing. That's the last time they'll be able to physically remove you from the reality for speaking the truth. Now you'll find that that's why they think their work is complete, because no one seems to know the truth, even though the truth is built within the language. The truth is built within subjects that we've cast away. So, like I said, some people say, well, I turn the lights off. Oh, what happened? This is what happened. You turn the lights off on me, I'm already a light. See, people didn't get it. Like, anytime you have to depend on some external light and you don't have one on your own, then it equals situations like we're in right now. That's why I coined the term inner stand, meaning that you need to figure it out inside first. Then once you figure out it inside, then you'll go into magnificent work. Then the energy that you actually have will be accompanied to the mission in which on the switcher. I've been, it takes a minute to reset the system, but just to I think a lot of people are tuning in, just so you know, those recordings will be, actually we have one recording going on here, but actually when some of this stuff cuts off, let me check and see how my recordings are actually holding up over here. But there is actually one backup audio recording to this conversation today. So that's what's good. And this thing is solid. It's actually recording, and it's still firing off, and it's got plenty of battery and everything. So we're not losing anything. We'll just have to skim back over it. But it's an immense show. Like, you can obviously see what we're dealing with has an entirely different nature to it, and something wants it to be repped right. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be this square conversation about, here's what happens with the pentagram. It's going to be, hey guys, it's time to wake up, or that word doom, it probably may come to play. And it's not going to be like something that's going to happen outside. So if you're looking for everyone to go with you, then that's not what's actually going to take place. It's going to be just in each individual. Every person will, their weights and their measures will come into play. So, okay, we're on. And I'm going to let you go ahead and jump into this, Dave. Like, obviously, we've had a couple interruptions, as I said before, when I don't know if we were on or off the line, but I don't know if I'm doing it or, we're just having some type of situation here in Costa Rica. But realistically, this building doesn't really have power outages. I was saying we have redundant supplies. So, I guess I love it. Like, realistically, it just shows me more that when the truth is coming out, it's just powerful. You may just be blowing this entire mainframe when the truth starts to really come upon people.
Right, most definitely. And one thing I did just want to say in terms of, the whole community of people who are delving into these topics and really genuinely trying to confront these issues and gain an understanding, gain a grounding on what's going on, we work against ourselves if we're constantly trying to divide ourselves from the conversation because we disagree with a tangential point, and thus we're so caught up in being right and somebody being wrong that we're no longer building in a team effort. Right. And I want to relate this to what goes on in sports as well. I mean, obviously, different people come with different abilities, whether it's a linebacker or a wide receiver, and those energies come together and contribute something different. Not necessarily something better, something worse, something, something right or something wrong. But so when people want to, get on these topics and the only thing they want to talk about is how, oh, this person's wrong, this person's right, understand that you're dragging the conversation down and the experience of people to try to generate in a collective sense. So one thing I wanted to segue this into is to the massive amount of energy that takes place on the football field. And Sevan, let's get into this Kundalini, because a lot of times we're watching activated beings on the football field, like in the Super Bowl, where there's so much energy being generated. Right. And let's talk about where that energy is going.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Let's definitely talk about that. The first thing I want to say is, also, as far as the chat box, I didn't talk about that before we started this conversation, but if someone is watching the chat box out there, I actually now have it up. If there's chaos or confusion going on in the chat box and you actually are part of that, then you will be removed from the chat box. It's just imperative. Like, I even had a guy that before this whole thing started a conversation onto the post about that this was not even worth analyzing and that this was being taken too far. And this was, of course, before the Super Bowl. But, you know, it's not being taken too far. It's a major topic. But if you feel that way, or if you feel like you disagree, just have enough respect to actually excuse yourself before you're excused. Because what that allows us all to do is it just allows us to progress. You don't have to worry about getting your energy drained from arguing with somebody, and we don't have to worry about taking the time and attention to actually to do something about you. So just people know that we are watching the chat box, but I don't think we have any problems. I'm looking through it now, and it doesn't appear to be anything going on. But to get right into this, the Kundalini situation is because that's, of course, the linchpin to all this, because what's happening is that the reason why we can't see whether these energies are around us or around other individuals is because there is a faculty that we have, which some people call the third eye, that we are not utilizing. And the reason why we're not utilizing our third eye is not just because of the overexposure to light and also the lack of meditation. These are two major components, but also that because you're actually dealing with inner reality. Excuse me, I have to close this thing down. Excuse me, I'm just having somewhat of a technical situation. I just had to close a couple windows down here. Some stuff popped up when the computer reset. Okay, so excuse me. But what I'm actually talking about here is that when you're dealing with the Kundalini force, the Kundalini itself rises from the base of the human being and then up, and then it cycles itself back around, and then it goes down, and then it does that. It's supposed to have a fluidic motion, okay? And what happens though with most people is that their Kundalini or spiritual energy is just within the base of their spine, coiled into their coccyx. Okay, so basically where one used to have a tail, that is where you push that area back there, that's where the Kundalini is. So what happens is that because the third eye capability is in the head of the individual, in order to be able to use those faculties properly, then you would need to raise the Kundalini fluids all the way up into the head. Now, this is why this has been always seen as the most dangerous thing to ever do by a person who is not adept at what exactly they're engaging in. And it's because once you open up the third eye, as anyone has done with things such as Dimitri or dimethyltryptamine or DMT, you realize at that point that actually everything around you is, from what you're calling alive, which is just energy, is giving off energy. And you can actually see the levels in the geometry even behind the energies that it's giving off. So even if you're in a laboratory full of computers and you happen to open your third eye, you're going to see all of the digital signatures of the Wi-Fi and all of that stuff. So this is also in this visual spectrum, which is a cornucopic field, the actual overlay or mesh for the eye of the serpent, meaning that the Vesica Pisces, which is the football, is actually known as the eye of the serpent. And so what you're dealing with is that, excuse me, got a little track here, but again, so if what you're dealing with is that with the Kundalini energy, you have to understand how to cultivate it. So how sports really work in conjunction with this, just to get into the topic, is you see this, basically you don't see this just in sports, you see this in every arena. You see this lack of knowledge from man, that of understanding what his semen or seamen that are actually traveling through an ocean or space are really for. So if you notice, there's only one biblical text that talks about the man spilling the semen on the floor and then he was killed. But what it is a metaphor. It's like when you spill your semen on the floor into a napkin or into a condom or something, then you actually put yourself into that situation, because they are only basically microcosmic versions or even excuse me, what is the word I'm looking for? But smaller versions of yourself, okay, that all spark. So if their original process is to actually send up your ladder, meaning up the base of your spine and then around your system to power your system perpetually, but you're actually pushing it out and then not actually producing with it, then you're actually wasting your seed. So most of all of the sports are geared around an extreme level of testosterone, where, man, I've actually been to a couple real Super Bowl after parties, especially being in Atlanta, So you can get an idea, or I have a very big idea of what exactly goes on in those parties, meaning that it's the entire environment of the rap music, an entire environment of basically the energy of combustion and confusion. So what this all leads to is it leads to a culture of this. It leads to every single facet, or as I say, Enneagram, that a person chooses as their pleasure for today somehow ties into them expelling and getting rid of all of their real energy, and then they're spending this energy as if it has no value. So this is how also Kundalini is tied into how much money you have. Now you actually see the connection with why athletes have a lot of money, because they're not wholly managing their sexual appetite. Anyone that's ever had an NFL friend knows that when it starts to get season time, they go to a camp. And there's no women allowed in that camp. You're not allowed, especially on the days before the game or any of that, to even go out and engage with females, because they have already the knowledge that if this guy goes out and he spends himself, then he's not going to play. He's not going to box. He's not going to do anything like he would if he had not. So this knowledge, of course, stems into understanding the Kundalini, because now, if you look at the movie, The Animatrix, you'll see there's the guy Dave. Actually, excuse me, not Dave, but yeah, David. You have the guy David that is actually discovers his Kundalini in a wholly different means. It says some people discover the matrix by wholly different means. Okay, they're going to tell you everything that's going on, because the Wachowski brothers are definitely on that side of doing the occult relations. But what happens is, if you really look deeply into the Animatrix, not the Matrix, but the Animatrix, you'll see this entire story play out with the character known in that document as Dave, and he actually unlocks his Kundalini and is able to see into the other realm and dimension and actually able to accomplish amazing things. But then you also see, of course, as the story of John Henry, they always end the story very crazy, but you'll see this symbolism coming in the end where that this David is supposedly put in a place where it's similar to a church or institution. Okay, so what they're showing you is the deep symbolism behind when there's awakening and when one is asleep. Now, it just so happens, my co-host today is named David, but this is not a pun at all towards David. But if you notice that all times in most movies that have come out, there is a character named David. And there's always an attempt to enlighten that character. And so this is what you get also, like I noticed in other films, Thor is becoming another heavy character. And so what you're looking at is that now there are characters or archetypes that are rising up, and they actually are seeking to channel energy through these archetypes. And so this is how you get the football teams, and you get the baseball teams, etc. And you get that the character that is actually running the ball, the character that is actually playing the game, is still under the umbrella of the actual team. So when there's a win and when there's energy taking place, it's basically the 49ers. It's not the individual player, or it's the Baltimore Raven, not the excuse me, what is the gentleman's name? Ray Lewis. So it's not these characters that are getting the energy. So all you have going on is you have these individuals that are charged up immensely with their Kundalini force, and then they're exerting that in a conflictive way. And then that energy is then enticing others, because you notice when someone else is watching a conflict, they go, ooh, and then they have a reaction. So that energy actually entices others to actually, get into conflict themselves. And then it's really almost a chain reaction to what you're dealing with after that. So to fully understand it, the Kundalini component comes into play with individuals that are very pumped up. Let me just say it like that. Those who are very well in shape, because the more oxygen you put into your blood, the more your blood starts to have more energy. And then that energy also wakes up this energy within your coccyx. It stimulates that energy, and it actually brings you into a higher stage of consciousness. But here's the but. If the person is physically identified or body identified, then they will be able to build an immense amount of physical strength and material sway, but their their spiritual component will still be defunct. And so hopefully that explains enough, but that's what you would really be dealing with. You're dealing with all of many of these avenues that you see within the reality, not all of them, but many of them. You'll find that there's a simple transfer of energy going on with one person idolizing another individual. So we'll talk about it from just the level of a concert. What do you see going on in the concert? The star gets on the stage, and then everyone sends that energy out. But then there are activities after the concert. There are the people who went to the concert that engaging in going to clubs. So there's an entire ripple effect that still stems on the externalism. So there's always some type of engage where there's a loss of energy. And so that's really, of course, we have plenty of shows on the secrets to Kundalini and how it works. But again, to understand when it's triggered, it can still also be used from a physical level to excel on a physical level. So but it gives you the answer to, like I keep explaining to a lot of people, especially when they say they have these financial problems, your current or currency is tied directly into how much current you have in your body, like how much energy you could actually carry through your body, how kinetic you are. And so these individuals are extremely electric, as they say, these electrifying. Now, but what gives that electric when you're talking about these kind of rituals and these kind of things that are going on, as what you see on the NFL, is that there is already now a template over that person's energy. I guess that's what I meant to also get across earlier about how the guy underneath the uniform and underneath the sigil of the team and all of that is not really on the level as the actual archetypes that are inheriting that energy from them. So, I mean, maybe I need to get into a little bit deeper about that, but what do you think about the explanation?
Well, definitely. I mean, that just brought up the point we were talking about earlier in terms of when Beyonce is actually going through her performance, how there is a level of possession that takes place. And even, as I was reviewing her performance, I definitely saw a few vivid moments where you could really look into her eyes and look into her face, and you can see where she goes into that archetype, the Elias, Sasha Fierce. And I think you can definitely even see that with someone like Ray Lewis, who, they developed an archetype for him, and he became this archetype of almost, the fallen angel as an NFL player, always, evoking Yeshua and praising God in a sense, and
right.
the way, almost possessed in the aftermath of a huge victory. You see that take place without question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because you actually see how this really blends in very easily with something like Christianity. Like last year with the Super Bowl, you actually see them, they had a real choir there from a church singing the song. But it's like, as long as they're singing Halo and as long as they're saying angel, then all the Christians are thinking, oh, this is something that's about our God. You see what I mean? And they like it. So there's this crossing over going on that was already inevitable anyway. Now, people have to understand, this is not what is taught to the standard Christian is that basically the devil is taking their knowledge and trying to fool them. But that's not what's happened. That knowledge has already always belonged under one system, which is basically the Abrahamic tradition. And the Brahmic tradition, when the Nagas were still ruling the world. So what happens with us, though, is that when we end up in this primordial soup, we end up in this basically when they were saying that the DNA of humanity is all misconfigured, the DNA gets misconfigured based on the environment. So when a person goes through spiritual experiences, then their DNA begins to actually change. Now, some of those experiences could be positive, or we even use terms like positive and negative at this point to explain this, but basically each experience is going to have a different effect on each individual. Now, what they would love to do, though, however, is to cookie cut spirituality, which is what religion really is. This is when someone actually dictates how you're supposed to look at your higher self now that you're on this plane. Meaning that since you're on the dimension, now you have to reflect to something to gain yourself back. And so that's what's really being engineered, which is the whole idea of what God is. And so I have this picture up because it shows that on the floor, as I was showing the pictures earlier, it shows that on the floor, there is, I don't know if it was in that same area because it was impossible to tell with the camera, but now again, a clear pentagram. So that small pentagram that is actually the center point of the entire stage is visible twice, but not something that is supposed to be visible within the video. You also have this other component that I was thinking about earlier, which is, the arrivals. When did the arrivals take place? When did these beings get here? Because there's a lot of books that talk about the arrival An or Anna, the one from the sky. Okay, and that's why, of course, the V series, the lady's name is Anna. But what you'll actually see is that it takes the guise of, it basically takes the guise of any person's weakness. This is the why there's always many arms with what is known as the unconquerable Durga. But what the symbolism is all about is just divas or devas. And when we get that term now, they know Beyonce is a diva. You ask someone and reading the Ebony magazine, they're going to tell you that. But then you look deeply into the word, you'll find that divas come from the Hindu word deva, and deva meant the lords over the devaconic plane, which came to us in English as devil. So it's almost like when you're watching what's taking place now, you're seeing that a big part of this division has a lot to do with basically possession. It has to do with where the individual has so many different energies that they can't, it's almost like a extreme case of bipolarism. It's not bipolar, it's like almost like a schizophrenic, meaning that the person will go through several different characters as they act out their play or their scene. Now, when you're talking about stars and actors, this actually is what people desire to see in order for them to really like that actor. And there's an image here, and we talked about earlier about the possession phase, which is basically when the person goes into the character in which they believe that if they portray, that's exactly how it's supposed to be portrayed. You also see this in the Madonna video. But what this is I had an even deeper example of this level of possession just on a simple level. Notice how with individuals such as Bruno Mars, the Bruno Mars is almost a duplicate of Michael Jackson. And some people would say that, well, that's great. Now there's another Michael Jackson. But in reality, what you're really dealing with is you're actually dealing with when a person decides that they're not creative enough on their own. So they're going to go and emulate another person. Okay. So this is also what this media thing is about. And it runs through all levels. Watch this. There's many people that want to be like certain stars and actors. If we want to get into sports, especially with the youngsters, there's a lot of them that want to be just like the athletes. But then, of course, you have the major component that always goes on with the football, which I was talking about earlier, which is the rape or the rap. And it's just like rock. Now, notice all these words begin with R. We'll get into a little etymology here. But what this connection is with, of course, this connection is within the language. It's actually showing us continuously this path. But we're actually at a point already now where we've graduated this path, meaning that many of us, especially in the side of the resistance, have actually gotten to the level that we understand all of what's going on and we know what's to avoid. So a major part of this conversation also has to be about what's next, which is how do you actually make it to your next step after your realization? But of course, before we do that, I'm going to go through just a couple more images here just so we can finish it off. Of course, these are common images that everyone saw during the show, which was definitely Beyonce throwing up the dynasty sign. Like I think Jay-Z spoke right when he was explaining to everyone what that actually is. And the dynasty, if you want to understand dynasties and empires and why we have empire state buildings, these terms don't come from what we know as America, meaning they don't come from the Western culture. They actually come from the culture of the Orient. So you do have with these media moguls in major societies this the money component, because you got to remember this is millions of dollars. There's millions of dollars being spent on the Super Bowl commercials, right? But if the millions of dollars actually equate to people's energy and time, do you see how many people are in the stands actually equates to how much money is being spent for the commercials? The energy is constantly cycling. Remember, these entities don't want money. See, money is the ultimate, their ultimate work. Because now it's basically alchemy. It's dirt in the gold. It's something that doesn't have any value, then perceived as value. So realistically, that's not what they want. They want what they can buy with money. And that's why the term is sell, okay? S-A-L-E is also cell, C-E-L-L. And everyone knows the actual appearance of a cell is an orb. So when you're talking about selling, now you can visualize that orb, and then when the person sells, or basically is seared or cut in half, then that's where the bowl or the division or the duality takes place. This is called death. Okay? So now the person has split from their actual spirit body, or basically they think that they're split from the spirit body. Excuse me, let me correct myself. They think that they're split from the spiritual body, and then they start living in this physical plane. And this is also why you'll understand that this stuff is inside of you. It's something that you have to master. Because if the body is based on phi, I'm not sure how many people are going to actually put this together in the show, so I'll give it to you. If the body is based on phi, and then phi is based on the pentagram, and the pentagram is the symbol of the serpent, then what does that say about much of the makeup of the physicality? I'm not talking about just the physical body. I'm talking about the physicality. And anyone that understands this knowledge understands why they call it the serpent's wisdom, because it's the wisdom about earth, basically matrices, how to manipulate matrices, how to understand the geometry that matrices are created with. All that is known as the serpent's wisdom. Now, this is why colleges and schools always utilize, even especially medicine, utilize these symbols, because it now means you're about to go through a prolonged period of time. A prolonged period of time of actually trying to learn something. Notice how most people that end up becoming doctors, lawyers, etc., spend years and years and years and years learning what? Something that can be defeated in one internet search on homeopathy. So see how something can actually waste your time, or someone can actually waste your time. And this is all of what this also was about with the Super Bowls and these things, because it's not something, as I talked about earlier, that you're going to sit down and get educated with. Now, what we've been able to do, and this is the next level of even being able to use this kind of energy constructively, is that we've been able to take this knowledge and then be able to show it to people, to empower them to know what's going on, for them to get serious about themselves, and then move themselves back into the control point, where there's not this invisible force that defines who you are. It's not something, and then notice how this invisible force is also synonymous with trusting in someone else to make sure that things go well for you. Still see for what it really is. You actually have to get to a point where you can self-sustain, self-substantiation. This means that you actually crack into the energy of where there's not the vacuum. And so, there's a lot of talk about the type of energies that are used within the higher planes, but it has nothing to do with combustion. So, we'll keep going through these images just to make sure we cover it. But I think it's pretty much well home. Now, here's another thing. Remember, this is the Joker, the Jester, the Jack. This is symbolism that is used very heavily. That's why there's a Union Jack. The Jack is the jackhammer. This is the one that goes before God. Jack is similar to this, synonymous with an angel. Okay, it's the one that's going to do the building. Notice how even within secret societies there's an architect, but the architect doesn't do the building. All the builders have to do the building. So it shows you who's getting the bulk of the work. So what you'll see here, this is what I found interesting. I was just doing some simple image searching. Not only do we see, every time you see the accents of the red, this is when you know that there is somewhat of this is the energy in which that they're trying to portray. Like if you come out in a red dress, then it's obvious. Excuse me, I need to switch to that. I'm actually looking at the wrong side of the switcher, but Excuse me, let's see. There we go. Okay, so I pulled this footage of Beyonce speaking after the show. Or actually it may have been before, I'm not sure. But at some point, she was talking either before or after the show, and she's got the red dress on. And of course, we understand what the red dress is synonymous with. The scarlet. The scarlet woman is actually the red dragon, the phoenix, etc. Okay? It generally comes in that motif because it's the motif of lust. It's when you're, for a man, the mental senses, and sometimes even for a woman, like actually these stars are synonymous, as Lucifer is an hermaphrodite generally in all the literature, but it means that they're appealing both to men and women, meaning that both man and woman strive to be like them. So she dons the red, but what do you see? And there's actually another one on the right side that we weren't able to get into the picture, but on the left side, behold, a joker, a jester. And so you see that the imagery, such as, there was another picture that I didn't include here, which was the lady, the only lady on the stage with the black and white dress. It was just completely out of line in the halftime show. But you'll see that because there is a ritual going on, it's very important to them to actually make sure all the symbolism is replete. And here's why. This is why you don't see a major variation between Madonna's show and also Beyonce's show. And the reason is because the ritual in which that is taking place is the same. And this is what I have here is I have the actual chorus to the songs that were sung during the last two Super Bowls as the last song. Even when the Super Bowl got to the point where people thought that Beyonce was going to walk off the stage, because she actually said goodbye to everyone at that point. If you watch it again, you'll notice. This was right before her next statement is, okay, I need to feel your energy. There's a point in the song where before she begins the song, she said, come on, I need to feel you. I need to feel your energy. Okay. And then she actually begins to sing this song with the mantra halo. Now, what you actually see here is you see within Madonna's lyrics, you also see her go into some level of prayer, get on her knees, and then also desire to have some type of union with an angel. And the reason why this works so well with church and everything is because everyone thinks, oh my goodness, my favorite star has now started believing like I am. Oh, I hope they start cleaning up their life and doing good music. And that's just as far as these people think about this. This is the real term of what you're talking about with the sheeple, but it means basically an individual that is going to only move by their emotions and how they feel. They're not going to do any real research about the topic. And that's why when you go and you do real research about the language and about the words, you'll find an immense web that you're entangled in. Sometimes, a lot with this spirituality, a lot of people act like they're on this higher level of consciousness, never realizing that if you can't get out of your body, then you're still just as tangled in as everyone else, experiencing different variations of the reality. Maybe this time you're rich, maybe this time you're poor. The key to actually controlling that, now remember, now you're not depending on this serpent and all of these other external energies, basically. You now need to build your own energy. And this is why it's locked in so closely with the relationship between man and woman, and how woman sees man and how man sees woman. And basically, what it ultimately comes into is how we see life and how we see other people around us. Because the key to all of this really is within, you'll notice there can be a desensitization, because this is the key to the word that we're looking for, the desensitization of an individual that is actually become overstimulated, overstimuli in a certain arena. And now you'll get to why whatever letter you put on the front of the word orn, you'll get closer to some of the individuals that are in energies that are responsible for putting that kind of energy out into the reality. And this, of course, is why horn and porn go together. And this, of course, is a lot of masculine and Martian energy. Okay, so what you're really dealing with is you're actually in a reality that you have immense levels of energies, yes, but how you choose to excrete those energies and in what type of subject you're engaging in equals everything. Because now you've become the gate for the energy that you are bringing out to come through. Okay? So now let's notice that every single excretion from the human body can be utilized in some type of way of joy. Earlier, I had tears of joy. You see? And there's also pee. People would think pee is like, oh man, what do you mean? What could be good in pee? What could be good in pee? Then you start learning the urine therapies and all the different things that are that entails. So you'll see that, and then also when the human being is eating the proper diet, even the feces becomes the actual fertilization for all the plants in which that they're growing. So some people say, well, how is that possible? It's possible the same way that you can utilize a cow's feces to actually grow some of our vegetables in. You see what I mean? So all the excretions that we have that are coming out of us, and that's why in the stadium there's a lot of sweating. That is one of the biggest parts of how this vapor, because if you wanted to see this entity, it's not invisible, but even to the trained eye, the one who does the third eye techniques can see it in the right state of breathing, even when all the lights are on. And it looks very similar to a vapor, something that you would see on a road when the road is a little hot. So what happens is that, remember, all this stuff opens up a very, very interesting adventure. This is not to be feared. It is fear that is keeping us here. Because the reason is that we don't want to know what happens when we die, because we don't even want to deal with that topic. So because of that, then it also forfeits us not wanting to know about how we can really live. Because the two are actually both the same thing. When you think of dying and living, now you actually have basically accepted the level 2 of the program of the matrix. And so this is also why any adept knows that each number is actually an entirely different program running. There's 1 who thinks that there's no others. There's 2 who's completely dualistic. There's 3 who works in this vicious group at times. There's 4 that thinks it's the door. There's 5 who's pinning in, and there's 6 who is recycling the energies. There's 7. This is the scythe. There's 8. This is the infinite energy. There's 9. That's the hidden one. There's 10. That's the binary world, the illusion. There's 11. Back to duality again. There's 13. That's the hidden one, Venusian, serpent. There's 14. You see what I mean? So every single level. Now, last time I checked, the highest number that people were actually using, the 2 numbers were a Googleplex, which is actually a very high number, and a petaflop, which is the next term for the data, which is 100 or 999 gigabytes. Excuse me, 999 terabytes. So you see that they're going in more of the direction of dividing. That's why the whole thing is configured as such, because the division is really the only thing they want to do. They just want to split you up more and more and more, but still allow those faculties that are split to operate in some way or another. Now, here's what's interesting. If you look under the microscope, you'll see a great deal of that going on. I was just looking at some videos that were just of some microscope shots of just simple organisms and bacteria. There was at least 50 specimens underneath the petri, meaning that the division level of what exactly exists in a physical reality is immense. So you can either go into that direction, meaning that the direction of division where you want to count up past Google's, or you can come back into one which you're already close to, meaning that many people are very close already to seeing that you don't want to really travel through this entire thing on your own. Not like there was anything on its own. When you actually take a breath is an energy within itself. So as I said before, most of the distraction of duality is just to get a couple minutes, even if it can, a couple hours, even if it can. I'm going to source some final images here, and then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take a look at some of these archives and things, and we're just going to, get into the thing, because we have another entirely different thing coming next week, especially for people that just tuned in. This is their first time hearing us. Know that, today was the occult review. There will continue to be occult reviews, and we will continue to expose the secret of the cloak and dagger situation taking place on the reality. But there's also ascension techniques. Meaning that on February 22nd, we're launching off completely with the collective virtual cleanse. Meaning that the people who are participating are going to go through actually cleansing all their organs so they can see. See, it's not, there's going to be a great chunk of this that could never be accomplished through a conversation. And that's the actual application. That's you following the techniques and the information in order to get yourself into a better position. Now, this picture in which I'm showing is explaining to you something that is taking place, and it seems to be a little bit more heavy. And I thought I would do my due justice and actually let humanity understand this component of the Asian American crossing of cultures. As you see, the term is El Cruz de Cultures, the crossing of cultures. And you see someone who was even wise enough, if you want to use that term, to include an inverted pentagram there on the left. Now, this is something that you can even go to the internet and you can Google this, and you'll go find this flyer, and you'll see it is configured as such. So what I'm trying to explain to you is someone knows about all this already. You won't be the first person to completely crack into this. You won't be the first person to choose to ignore this if you choose to ignore this today. I know there's a lot of people that have come into direct conflict with certain things that they've seen or certain experiences that they've had with just small parts of what is going on with our entire faction. But just as with anyone, you cannot judge a person based on a sliver of what you see them do. But if you start seeing their entire character being absorbed into something, then you know what you're dealing with. So what this means is that you have to have the wisdom that gives you the ability to discern. They used a lot of these terms in the Bible because they're plagiarizing directly from the universal principles. You have to gain the second sight. And at least if you have not unlocked that second sight, meaning you haven't unlocked that third eye yet, then you need to be able to see it, in second sight. Third eye. Second sight is when you can read a two-dimensional symbol and understand what's around. That's, of course, coins the esoteric term, do you see that star? No, sir, I see it. Meaning that when those who understand this symbolism see the symbolism, they act like they don't know what it means. That's what they're trained to do. If you look at all the initiations, all the rites, they're actually trained to use secrets, to use codes. Now, remember, they can't even communicate amongst each other if one of them is in a higher rank than the other. And this is important for you to understand, meaning that the secret societies are so compartmentalized. It's just like the military. In the military, I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but a private is not allowed to marry a general. It's not approved by the military because the military is a draconian structure where no one of lower rank can marry into the areas of higher rank. And then you'll start also seeing why there's these caste systems, why they seem to want to determine who's of lower rank and who's of higher rank, of course. You actually see in our world these injustices all the time. And it's almost like, well, excuse me, it's not almost like, it's like we're the target. You see, like, I think people need to wake up because some people are fighting amongst each other, but we're the target of something that is watching from an entirely different perspective and actually keeping us in conflict and basically a confusion with one another so that we'll never figure this out. At times, there's been a separation between even a person having the resources and funding and the ability to actually bring forth the message. Then there's always been a limitation within how many people can actually get the information anyway, meaning before computers and all of that, the most that you were going to get is a book. But guess what? For the last thousands of years, most people that make up the area of what we know as the masses weren't even allowed to read. So, as I said in the other conversations, when you go into the arenas of the elite, you'll probably find that they're not speaking English. They're speaking an entirely different ancient tongue, A tongue that corresponds to the way that to the vibration of what you're actually saying. So the reality responds. And this, of course, again, gets us into Kundalini. And I'm going to be rounding this up here in a moment. But what Kundalini also allows is that what you say comes to pass faster. Now, this is also why they're utilizing this inverted pentagram, because there's a secret behind the inverted pentagram. First of all, pentagram was never showed right side up. It was always showed inverted because it's related to Venus, and Venus is upside down. And what it meant was driving the force of the Kundalini down below the waist. So while if you understand anything about how the system works, you understand that you need to raise energy from your coccyx up down the back of your spine. And then if you actually have received that path, then it will actually go all the way down and come all the way back up. And this will definitely be like for the individual that is experiencing that, as if they went into hell and emancipated everyone that was down there and then bought them all out. Okay? So that's what that would appear like in the across realities. Okay? But now the next scope of this is, what happens if the energy goes down before it ever becomes enlightened, before the Kundalini ever reaches above the clouds and to see Earth and to glance upon it as a marble, but goes down and never sees this hope? I guess that would be the term. Let me use a different term here. I don't even like the word hope. It rhymes with pope, so if he's like, well, he's on the words, but no, serious. Like, you have to really look at these words that you're using. What happens is that when the energy comes up, this is very similar to you actually being able to come out and see yourself for what you really are, and you're completely expanded and you're free. Okay? So when you have that experience, that experience drives you for a while. And in fact, my experience like that has been driving me for the last 5 years, perpetually, because I saw it, like the whole realm ripped. So, and I was completely just conscious, not, no hallucinogens, no nothing, and it happened for me. So now you have to see that that moment created a great deal of energy. It reconfigured the Kundalini, so I'm actually able to carry the message that I'm carrying today. So this gives you a clue also to how this energy really works. It works based on spiritual experiences with yourself, and actually starting to become the ruler of yourself. As the Bhagavad Gita speaks of, the battlefield of Varanja is actually a person's body. It was never meant to be taken externally. But now when we're in an external plane and someone can actually put on that mask, and this is why, of course, there's a lot of masks used within the rituals, they can put on the mask of the archetype or the energy in which they wish to emulate. And so a lot of the symbolism is deep and rich. And I mean, let's hear from Dave and see what he's got to say about it. I know, we went kind of a bit of a gambit there, but, I'm actually bringing it back together. We had 2 power outages earlier, had to bring the system back up. They even got me a little roused up about the situation because, it's just a little bit agitating until you look at it another way. And it didn't take me long to do that, because it's like, I just feel stronger every time something happens that even will be perceived as something that's holding us back, because it's too late to be held back. Meaning that any type of hindrance to actually going forward has to be immediately dealt with. This is also what the fear thing and overcoming fear. We're almost to the point of being in the laboratory, per se, with trying to figure out how to diffuse fear within people who have been embedded with it from situations in their life. Like, there's talk of missing elements, missing cell salts that actually fix some of the obsessions and possessions that happen within the human body. I'm going to source some links that I've discovered about even the actual missing cell salt, which was actually supposed to be a gold with the as a base cell salt that actually cured alcohol, and that the ones who bought AA, or Alcohol Anonymous, that's also the symbols of the Illuminati. It's basically how to get rid of any habit but still be somewhat compartmentalized unless you can break out of it. So, I mean, there's an immense level of information here, because what we're talking about is how to get rid of addictions with actually restoring the part of your body that is actually causing that addiction. And the reason for that, because after we've actually studied the entire synopsis, or what they will call the, mitosis of the situation, is that a person that has a desire to be highly conductive, okay, this is the secret to especially cannabis and many of the other substances, a person that desires to be highly conductive, okay, needs that energy to be conductive, of course. But what happens in the reality is the person's always getting drained. Now they need something to make them conductive. Now, it just so happens that smoke is a conductor, a very deep conductor. But deeper than that, there is the biorhythm, meaning that when you smoke a plant, the biorhythm of that plant actually connects the bodies to a certain degree. And that's why some people feel enlightened or like they want to think and things when they try certain substances. But what this obsession is actually an obsession with wanting to be like what we were all the time. So what they're saying is in these documents, and the documents are immense, like I got the entire compendium in front of me. What they're saying is that our addictions are coming from the actual imbalance within our system. And then that imbalance causes us to want to restore that imbalance based on what they're giving to us. So notice how this is not just about medicine, my friends. It's also about sports. Because if there is something about the individual that is playing on the field that you desire to be, then so much that you'll sit down and watch it before you try to become it yourself, you're getting to the root of the problems of addiction. See, addictions are not just drugs. Obviously, addictions are very synonymous with habits. Habits are always synonymous with hobbit. Hobbit means a smaller spirit, basically a smaller man. So, you know, there's a lot of riddles to the English language showing what these words really mean. But it means that you have energies that have a tendency to want to go in one direction while you want to go in another. And if they win over your mind state, then it is at that moment that you make that choice, the direction that it wants you to go in. So it's very easy now to see that the body is basically a spaceship. Who you allow on board is up to you. Some people need to let some things out of the airlock fast. There's a simple principle here. If you don't think it's going on, but you find a lot of confusion and chaos around you, it's going on. It's very easy to isolate and get rid of. It's all about vibratory frequency. So vibratory frequency is not just namaste, brother, love and light. That only lasts for certain times, especially until the bills come around. There is another energy system that's within the body that reaches far more deeper than the physical currency of this world. That is the depth of who you are. Pure energy. Now, here's the thing about energy. Energy is stored up experiences. So inside of those experiences, inside the caustics and the disc in your spine, is an immense level of data that you really need to prepare yourself for, seeing that ideas are energy. The reason why you know ideas are energy, as we talked about on a few shows ago, is that if you knew and you were convinced that you had just won the lottery, you wouldn't go to sleep that day. If the bureau called you, you went to the store, you bought the ticket, you saw the news, they called you, you won, boom. Do you think you're going to go to bed that night? But that's just an idea because you haven't got the money yet. You see what I mean? So ideas are power. That's why knowledge is power. But what is the ultimate power then? Truth. Because there's the knowledge about the world, as I talked about earlier, and then there's the knowledge about yourself. And that's what people have to start getting into. Like, this is like your body is pushing that button that's saying, hey, I need attention, because you've been giving so much attention to all these external things that I'm lacking. I'm not being fed. And this doesn't make you the individual that you really can be. So I'm going to let Dave go ahead and say what he needs to say. If there's some people that have some questions in the chat box, now will be the time. And then, of course, we will be rounding off the program now. Around now, if we could. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I felt it was only appropriate given the blackout of the Super Bowl that we had a couple of our own here tonight. You know, definitely just rounding out what you just dropped it on. It's sort of this concept that we do when we do physical training. If you notice, when you release endorphins, you're cultivating an actual organic reaction in your body that is making you feel a certain way. It's making you feel high, for lack of a better term. That you know, so if we're not cultivating that organically using our own generation, using our own forces, then we're going to look outside of us to find that. And that's why we like to say, you know, we're going to strengthen you from the inside out. lest you leak your energy and allow something to get inside you from the outside in.
Right.
And that's really what this discussion is about. And I think if people can really see that, just a glimpse, even if it doesn't necessarily have to be the third eye experience Sevan talked about. It can just be that energy you cultivate. Even when you open a door for somebody, you feel something. There's an electricity, there's a generation that often happens inside of you. It can happen through workouts as well.
Right.
But what we're talking about is really being able to rally all those forces inside of us.
Right.
And that's the way we're going to affect our reality, or we'll have the reality affect us.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
It's our choice.
Exactly. I mean, it's definitely 100% the way I feel. I mean, it's been like we've been up now for, you could take a break here for a moment, but we've been up now for 3 years, going through this like consistently. Like people need to understand that the resistance actually we hit, it's ironic, but we hit 7,000 members today. Like I can actually, I probably source my screen here, but we hit 7,000 members today. And it also shows that, you go through it, and you keep pushing, and then it starts to really, really see, it's our duty. I see it as our duty to actually be able to, since we have so much access to knowledge and to people who have knowledge, to be able to get what needs to be known. That's also what we talk about as far as the cream of the knowledge, because it's like, why talk about washing the car, but we're about to go drive in the mud? Meaning that two things are done in the wrong order. And it's, how can we talk about planets and going into other existences and all that, and we're still dealing with a division problem on our planet? Only thing that you will go into is a more accelerated version of what you've already been configured to be. And this is the other thing about this force. Now remember, they drive this force down. So I'm sure many of those players, like you see the Longhorns and many of those players, they already know that the horns are going down. And they're okay with that. And that's what the whole part of where many of these guys, there's a ring associated with a Super Bowl. There's a ring associated with Masonry. And of course, there's a ring associated with a Saturn. And then the compartmentalization is endless. So most of these organizations are completely, at times, erroneous to what the other organization is really up to. So that's the other thing. There's no honor really amongst thieves. Or Thebes, which is, of course, the Theban priesthood, meaning that it's all about magic, or in lizardry or wizardry, sorcery, trickery. That it's actual magic built on cunning. So, and then it's very specific. Like I was saying, if you really wanted to see it, there are books that are $40,000, $50,000 on eBay that, within a couple excerpts from the pages that the people have copied and pasted, you can see what it's all about. But you would need $40,000, $50,000 per se to buy that book, so you can see who it's also catering to. And then when you see, again, the immense level of wealth, it's because the inversion of the Kundalini seems to also kick up what is known as the dirty money. And it's interesting that it's highly possible that dirty money actually causes the Kundalini to go down when invert itself when the person is spending it, because money is not just some lifeless piece of paper. I did say it was alchemy, dirt into gold earlier, but even dirt has an extreme level of power to it. So what you're dealing with is you're dealing with a talisman. And once again, many people would be confused to how a piece of paper could affect things. So before we would even talk about magic, you can see already that a piece of paper does affect things these days. It's called money. But even deeper, talismans were known to have a spiritual effect on people. We need to think about this. And it wasn't just about, like, all the old talismans could not be exchanged for food in the store. So this one's gotten as far as even now being exchanged for food in the store, but the symbolism that is on currency, most currency, carries symbols of the Venusian situation going on. The whole Venusian idea even is money. So this makes us, in certain instances, partakers. This is the uncomfortable part of the conversation. That's why I was saying this is something that we have to do something about now. even for our children, because we're digging a deeper hole of debt, perceived debt. Signing up for 2 or 3 lives of this. I love this. This is my God. God says, oh, you're going to be with me? Yeah, I'll be with you. There's all these commitments, oaths, pacts. So we have to see that this is a time that we can wake up in a reality and wake up in all of our subsequent selves to stop this whole everything is divided, everything's about division, which doesn't allow us to work together. And so it's basically a simple principle. Once there's something outside of wholeness, what they say outside of the zero, then division begins. And if you look at life, and this is how you can connect it all back again to the geometry to complete this. If you look at life, life is circular. All of what you see is circular. But there's something that the circle says. Meaning that there's a deeper meaning behind when that 2-dimensional circle actually connects. And here's that secret. Because a 2-dimensional state of mind sees itself, and then it sees itself as this flat circle. The 3-dimensional state of mind, or the expanded state of mind, sees itself as a sphere and a coil and then a torus of energy. You see what I mean? So the geometry is showing you there's a metamorphosis taking place. A metamorphosis from a dot, then to a circle, 2-dimension, then to the sphere, 3-dimension, and then into these coils, or toruses. And that's why they're saying that the entire universe is a donut. And they say the secret is in the whole of the donut. That's what they're actually saying. But it's actually, the secret is how to actually generate the energy through your body to allow it to power up to become the universe that it is, but has just forgotten. So Dave, is there any questions that are out in that chat box? I haven't had a chance to tune into it. I was just trying to keep the bandwidth down a little bit. But I think that, we pretty much ran the entire gambit on the situation. It would be a little redundant to continue.
Yeah, we definitely did. I mean, I just want to say it's been an honor to share the space with you, and everyone else listening. It's been an honor to, collaborate with you in this manner. Wholeness and much love to everyone.
Oh man, likewise. I mean, I definitely wanted to say thanks to not only everyone, but also to definitely my co-host for making himself available. And, we definitely have more shows coming. I mean, it's already, me and Dave have known each other for a really long period of time at this point, almost since the inception of the resistance itself. So it's been like, a lot. It's been a long time coming. We've worked on a lot of stuff just together and build together. And then now it's just time for us to move to the point of being able to get this information to people together. In fact, the reality of the resistance now is that expansion. We are actually working with individuals that are helping us with that, meaning being able to get people here into Costa Rica and actually working alongside of us. But I will say in the beginning that it actually takes an individual that's willing to push. Like, man, I was up at 5:30. I thought I was actually going to be done. I was going to be doing an intro to the show, and then I had a couple more things to do. And then just in absorbing all the content, putting all the content together, getting all the things up, it just chewed up a lot of time. But the time was well worth it. I actually was only upset because I felt like I wasn't going to have enough energy during the show to really, really get the message out the way that needed to get out. And of course, I'm sure through the message, there's some dry spots. As I always say, I'm the worst critic, but there is also some gems in here, some things that you actually are able to see in the reality going on, to make a few adjustments inside of yourself. So that way you can actually patch up those holes within your torus and start understanding how to inflate properly, breathe properly, whole body breathing, understanding how to to tilt the legs so that the coccyx is able to get the prana and the energy that it needs to start waking itself up properly. Also remember that next on the 22nd, we're actually going to begin the virtual cleanse. But what that also entails is we're going to go through whole body breathing. We're going to go through crystal meditation, because each day it's going to be about 9 days. So each day we're going to have to find something to do. There are 3 levels to it, because of course the internal cleansing kits do come in 3 levels, which is, we call it good, better, and best, which is basically to the degrees of how much you're going to fast through it. It is a complete cleansing, meaning it's not just something that we're grabbing off of some recipes from the internet. It's lymphatic system, gallbladder, blood, the entire thing. Because realistically, you don't run your car around, as I say, you don't run your car around without giving it a filter change and giving it an oil change. So why do you do your body that way? Likewise, if you're thinking that you're okay, how do you know? Because the last time that your body was actually in optimal condition was when you were a child. And very few people can tap back into when the feeling of when they were exactly in the body as a child. They can tap back into, some of the situations and things that were taking place. But do keep in mind that this does break down to something simple. As I explained earlier, this is in that post, and I actually see if maybe Keyshawn or somebody listening can actually put the link. Actually, I don't think you can link here, but everyone should be familiar with that post. Just remember, all of this is the data. This is what is to study, okay, about the happenings of what is going on to the level of how you can comprehend it. But the real application is inside. Until that begins, there will be no progress, no real progress. There will be an illusion of progress. Inside, you're dealing with your mind, your body, and the soul. When you at times reflect on yourself, think about those sometimes in the positions in which they live in, or basically the environments in which they carry themselves in, mind, body, and soul. They are very connected with each other, but in many ways, one can be the Achilles heel for the other. Some people are in great physical shape, great mental shape, spiritually dead. Some people very spiritually brilliant, mentally sound, and then physically just toxic. So all of that starts to come together, since how you can actually turn a lot of this negative energy back around, because you've worked, so you deserve to receive your lot, your pay, is you actually utilize all of what you see going around you to get very serious. And then you start applying the cleansing to yourself. Like, this was something that I said to myself once I got about 2 or 3 years into the path of cleansing and fixing the vehicles. I thought about the past when I used to have a great deal of cash. And I said, man, if you had to just put that into your body, like your cleansing and supplements and those kind of things, instead of those cars and all of the music and all of the different things that you purchase, remember, if you put it in your body, then you always have it. And so sometimes you have to think about how much it really is worth to you. Meaning that at times when we want something, oh man, nobody can stop us from getting it. There's this person that we always call and it says, hey, can you do this for me? And it's about something that definitely is not going to take you anywhere. This will take you somewhere. It's not something that you have to believe in me, meaning internal cleansing is not something that you have to believe in me to work. It's something that works based on the principles of what you're doing. And that's the knowledge that you really want. Because the reality of this whole thing is that there was this fake knowledge. It was AI, artificial. Then there was this real knowledge. This is likened unto the curve in the straight line. With the curve, that's the knowledge of nature, the forces. They call it Odinic force, the Kundalini, real force. There's the forces of nature. Like generally when there's an earthquake and tornadoes and stuff, I'm sure Beyonce and all of them folks are shaken up. You see what I mean? Because that's a different force, a force that is more powerful than them. That's why they write in their contracts, what is that, force majeure? I think Dave would know the correct pronunciation, but this means that basically, if anything act of nature, we can't control. So this means that nature forces, which are inside of you, they can't control. But the straight line forces, droid, the 0 and the 1, straight line reality, geometry, externalization, and everything else that goes with it, except the decimals and all that, that's what their arena. So if you jump into their arena, their court, as they call it, court means an enclosed place, by the way. If you jump into their court or their garden, their walled garden, enclosed garden, etc., acting like that you're going to master over it, then you may have fallen into the same trap that everyone else has that's in that trap. Master yourself. That's all I have to say. So wholeness and balanced vibrations. And again, thanks, Dave, for definitely hosting the show. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. All those that are in the chat box. It's been awesome. Like I said, I'm going to work on these archives and see how much was able to be caught, because generally when the footage is clipped, then at times it doesn't actually record it. But I think Livestream is really good at making sure they get those recordings back out. So if you're looking for the archives, it probably will come in a few hours, especially once I approve some of the things that are pending. So that's it. Dave, do you have anything else to say before we adjourn here?
Yeah, definitely. Just want to send a salute to everyone out there who shared this time with us, and rest assured the resistance has a lot more coming. And it's like I said, it's been an honor, man. I appreciate everyone out there. I appreciate you, Sevan. Wonderful job again. And I'm just really looking forward to what's coming, man.
Oh man, for sure, for sure. So definitely there's a lot more coming. I encourage everyone to tune in, sign up to the Resistance website. There's a lot of information there for you. We do shows every other Sunday. We'll probably keep rolling this occult review also every other, I guess this is Tuesday, or basically when we can get enough information to bring to you that we feel that is imperative for you to know. We don't want to waste your time. This is not that kind of thing. We really want to get you empowered, because we know for sure that getting you in the know actually equals a better universe for all of us. And I'll tell you this, there's no telling what's inside some of these children, meaning that to get these children awake, you may think that this thing is out of our league. I want to tell people this. You may, and like me, I don't care. I'll run through all of them if I have to. But the reality is that you may think in your mind at times that this thing is out of our league. But it is for sure not out of the league of our children. And the reason is because the children are us, already come back again. And so if you're making the right choices now in life, you will probably get a chance to be around the next version of you. And some people may think that's a conundrum, but when you really think about the time lag on a physical reality, then you understand why birth even takes place. Wholeness.